Welcome to my channel, where I bring literature to life through dramatic readings. Whether you're a fan of whodunits, fantasy, or anything in between, you'll find something to love here. Join me as I dive into the world of words and let the stories unfold before your very eyes. This week we're doing Forgiven by Theresa Hodge. Here's the blurb. Blake. Sage was my only love and the only one in my soul. Her love made my every wrong right. She was my first love, and my love for her grew stronger with every breath I took. She made me a better man. In marriage, our hearts became one and our lives were bonded forever when I promised to hold her close to my heart and remain loyal to only her. Beyond my promises, I made mistakes. I failed my beautiful wife. Still, Sage means the world to me, because once mine, forever mine, until death do us part. Sage. At one time, I loved another and thought I'd never love again. But after Blake came into my life, there was no other. I wanted to share all my love with him. The way he looked at me and showed me how much he cared, he grabbed my heart forever. With Blake, I was a better woman. After the vows we took, I had no doubt our love would last for all eternity. Then to discover that Blake's promises were lies, I'd been played a fool, broke my heart once more. Now nothing will ever be the same. Forgiven is an emotional story of love, heartbreak, and betrayal. Turn the pages and find out if two hearts can heal from the pain of broken promises. Will Sage and Blake find their way back to each other, or is their lost love forever? Y'all. Okay, so we're going to read. This one is kind of short, the chapter, so I'm going to actually read the prologue and chapter 1 because they look short. Prologue. Sage. How did I go from happiness to so much pain in a week's time? One moment Dylan and I were in love, the next he was gone. I vowed my heart would never open itself up to that much pain and heartache ever again. Dylan Montgomery was my breath of fresh air. He was the charismatic, blonde-haired, golden boy who had promised to love me to the very end. 8 years earlier, on a cold winter day, Dylan had called me saying that he had something important he needed to discuss with me. I was sure he was going to ask me to be his wife. I didn't care if I had 2 more years at university. I knew I would make Dylan a great wife and continue my studies for my English literary degree at the same time. Dylan had been the one for me. He was the one I had given my virginity to in freshman year at college. Dylan had been a graduating senior with a degree in marketing and business under his belt. He was a genius who came from an influential family with a long line of wealth that dated back for generations, but he never acted as though he were better than anyone. I was surprised when he chose me, an average black girl from Brooklyn, to be his. I admit it was easy to love Dylan. He was charming, sweet, charismatic, and his eyes were the bluest of blues I had ever seen. I was a junior at NYU when Dylan asked me to meet him at Tabonette at Hell's Kitchen. Our favorite eatery served the Middle Eastern Mediterranean food that I had fallen in love with since I had met Dylan. Dylan introduced me to a lot of different things that I wouldn't have tried on my own. Other than my parents, Ethel and Paul Wilson, Dylan and Tanya, my best friend, were my 2 favorite people, and I knew they had my back. She was more of a sister to me. I don't think I would have made it through my college years without her. She was Dylan's and my biggest cheerleader. I never doubted that Dylan and I would have a happy life together. He was going to be a prominent tycoon who blazed the path, conquering his dreams, and I was going to be top journalist for the New York Times. Dylan used to tell me I was his everything woman who had stolen his heart the moment he saw me studying at the NYU library. He was my heart, my rock, and my best friend. Those words were just a few to describe Dylan, because he was just so much more to me. Before Dylan, I had yearned for a soulmate. After he blew into my life, he was like the missing piece of a lost puzzle. We were a perfect fit. Well, at least I thought we were the perfect fit until he decided to manage the newest Montgomery empire in Paris, France. Memories of the past flooded my mind. Memories of our love overwhelmed me, and I let them flow freely. "Hey, baby," Dylan said as he waited for me outside my dorm room in his brand new Mercedes-Benz. "You look beautiful." I was wearing a new outfit that my friend Tanya had helped me shop for. I knew I shouldn't have spent the money on new clothes, but I wanted to look nice for him. I wore a maroon sweater dress and paired it with the over-the-knee wine-colored boots. "Thank you." I beamed and wrapped my arms around Dylan's neck as he placed his hands on each side of my waist and pulled me to him. Dylan lowered his head and planted his lips on mine. He nipped at my bottom lip and sucked into his mouth before licking it with his tongue. My insides warmed from his kisses. Dylan's hand slid down and gripped my behind. "I love your behind," he chuckled and gazed down at me before he kissed me again. "You have a great chest, too." He gave me a one-sided naughty grin. "I can't get enough of you," he added before attacking my lips again. I simpered under Dylan's kisses. He was such a great kisser, even back then. "I think we better go if we don't want everyone gawking at us," I suggested, as other students passed us getting an eyeful. "Let 'em look, darn it. You're mine and I'm yours," he stated before letting me go and helping me into his vehicle. "I love you, Dylan," I said as he left the campus and pulled into the highway. Dylan reached over, grabbed my hand, and brought it to his lips. "I love you more than anything," he responded and gave me a quick look before returning his gaze to the roadway. Once Dylan and I arrived at the restaurant and placed our orders, Dylan gazed in my eyes. "I have some important news, babe." "What is the news?" I questioned, taking a sip of my glass of iced tea. "You know I graduate next week, right?" "Of course I do. I have a perfect celebration planned for next weekend." "How do you feel about celebrating in Paris instead of here?" Dylan asked with a low expectancy on his handsome face. "Paris? What do you mean?" I asked, feeling confused. Dylan reached across the table to take both of my hands in his. "My father wants me to move to Paris right after graduation to head up the Paris office. I want you to come with me." "I can't move to Paris, Dylan. I have my scholarship at NYC, and you know my parents won't allow it, since they pay my expenses that my scholarship doesn't cover." "Don't worry about money. I'll take care of it for you, and you can finish your studies in Paris. After you graduate, we'll get married. I'll even splurge on that big wedding you said you always dreamed about." My lips trembled and my eyes burned with the emerging of unwelcome tears. "What about the promises you gave me? You vowed to me that you were going to work for Montgomery Incorporated here in New York." Misery overpowered my words as quiet tears streamed down my cheeks. "Why don't you come with me, Sage? Going to Paris, I get my feet wet, run the company, and I won't be under my father's shadow. I get to call the shots." Dylan held my hands tighter when I tried to tug them away. "You lied to me," I blubbered as more tears fell. "Don't cry, sweetheart. I'll tell you what. You can stay here and finish college, and I will come back to visit as much as possible. I'll even send for you. Please stop crying, babe. I promise this won't be the end of the world. Your last 2 years of university will fly by. I promise." You promise?" I stared at Dylan with confusion in my heart. "Your promises mean nothing to me." I finally pried my hands away from his. Dylan's news had caused sweet, perfect bubble that I lived in to burst. "Don't do this, Sage. Please Please don't pull away from me when I need you the most. We need each other. Take me back to campus, I demanded. I didn't wait for Dylan's answer. Instead, I stood and fled the restaurant in tears. Sage! Sage! Dylan called my name repeatedly, but I didn't turn around. It was just my luck that a taxi was pulling up when I made it outside. I didn't think, I just reacted. I jumped into the cab and ordered the driver to go. I looked back to Dylan to see him run out of the restaurant after me. A look of pain radiated from his blue eyes, but my anger didn't allow me to think rationally. Go! I demanded again, just as Dylan's eyes clashed with mine from the taxi's window. He started running my way, but the taxi had already taken off. I laid my head back against the seat and cried as if someone close to me had died. That night was the end of Dylan and me. For a long time after Dylan left, I felt as if I were standing on the outside of my life looking in. I drifted through my studies and would have given up on social life completely if it hadn't been for my good friend Tanya. And then one day, I caught a glimpse of the golden guy, Dylan Montgomery, on one of those entertainment magazines. He had a beautiful Parisian model on his arm at some big business affair. My heart was torn to pieces. Dylan's image became more visible in the media as time went on. Then I saw him on SE magazine with another beautiful blonde-haired woman on his arms. I assumed beautiful slinky blondes were his new preference. I cried for days. My heart broke all over again because love had called my name once upon a time. I couldn't trust that love would ever be mine again. At that moment, I knew he wasn't pining away from me the way I did him. Although he texted and called me religiously for the first year he left for France, by the second year his calls had gotten few and far between until they dwindled down to a text here and there wishing me a happy holiday. But I still dreamed of Dylan's strong arms holding me, even though he held another instead. Then 3 years later, I met Blake Coleman. I had never thought I would ever love again. I was once again at peace with everything that had happened before meeting him. At one time, my heart had carried such hurt that I couldn't entrust it to anyone else. Then Blake Coleman swept into my life one crisp spring day. Suddenly, my somberness turned into cheerfulness. My frowns turned into laughter. My tears dried, and the once gray matter of my heart opened up with the prospect of loving someone new. He was like a new beginning, full of energy, yet calm and patient, and he carried a rare beauty with the grace of a true gentleman. At one time, Dylan wrote poetry on my heart. Now, Blake was the orchestra playing beautiful melodies in my soul. He never took my newfound love for him for granted. My heart slowly mended, breaking the spell Dylan had once woven. The love that we once had been voided. That didn't happen overnight, nor by happenstance. It happened because of Blake. Even on days when I didn't feel love or wanted to be loved, Blake showed me unlimited love. I finally accepted that I was the woman who needed to know that she was loved. I needed to feel as if I were the answer instead of a problem to be solved. Blake made me his priority. He never made me wonder if I was ever the one. I needed to feel that poetry written in my heart again. The forever type of poetry that could withstand the test of time. Blake never pushed me to tell him of my pain. He just stood by my side, penetrating the hard barrier I cloaked myself in. But his patience, love, and kindness eventually wore me down. I felt happiness bloom inside me once again in brilliant shades of love. If love had a color, it would be Blake in high definition. With his windswept hair, tall muscular frame, neatly trimmed beard, and dark tan, Blake had the air of a confident man who knew that what he wanted out of life. And he wanted me. He was 5 years older than my 24 years and was already established as a businessman in advertising at his company when we met. Blake loved me enough to see me through until I could trust his love. I was no longer on the outside looking in, since he had drawn me into his existence. He had made me his and burned the love I felt for another from my reality. I became his and Blake became mine one summer day in June, 5 years earlier, when I had become his bride. I promised myself that Blake was the one for me. Almost 5 years and some months later, I felt our love would last an eternity and beyond. Or so I hoped. Okay, I lied, y'all. I was going to read another chapter, but that went way longer than I thought, and I think this is a great hook. You've got to check this out. Yes, absolutely. Check this out. Y'all gonna have to forgive me for fibbing to you. I thought that this was a shorter story, but then when I started reading it, it started getting longer, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I was really into it. However, I don't want to ruin it for you or make this video way too long. So forgive me on that for fibbing to y'all. My bad. And I'm going to definitely say, I hope that you enjoyed this dramatic reading. I know I did. And even more, I hope you enjoyed the interpretation of this literary work. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay updated on my latest video. Hit that bell, bing, so you won't miss the notification. And let me know in the comments, I'm just saying, which books you'd like to see me bring to life next. And of course, as always, there will be a link in the description to this book. I'm just saying, I hope you enjoy yourself. And until then, happy reading!